She didn't even notice I was there. I watched her for 11 minutes before she saw me. 11 full minutes. I counted. In that time, she touched his chest twice, leaned in so close she could have tasted the salt rim of his drink, and laughed, really laughed, at something he whispered. Not the polite smile she gives co-workers or the tight-lipped chuckle she throws me across the dinner table. No, this was the kind of laugh that made her tilt her head back like she used to when we were still new. And I just stood there, frozen, half behind a concrete pillar, holding a glass of flat champagne and a tiny plate of shrimp I no longer wanted. The music was too loud. People were everywhere. But for some reason, in that moment, everything went still for me. Like one of those movie scenes where the camera zooms in and the sound fades out. I wasn't supposed to be there yet. I had told her I was running late from work. Truth is, I left early. I wanted to surprise her. I even brought her favorite cookies from that overpriced bakery downtown. They're still in the car. I don't know what hurt more, watching her casually press her hand against his chest, or watching her panic when she finally spotted me. Because it wasn't the guilt that hit her first. It was fear. Like she had been caught shoplifting something small. Like I was the cop. And in that exact second, I knew everything I needed to know. But I didn't make a scene. I didn't walk over. I didn't say a single word. I just turned around, left the building, and drove home in silence. She came back hours later. The first thing she did was check if I was awake. I wasn't. But I heard her crying in the hallway. And that was only the beginning. She left the light on in the hallway, which she never does. I lay there with my eyes closed, the ceiling fan clicking like it was counting down something awful. I could hear her breathing outside the bedroom, sharp and irregular, like someone trying not to drown in a shallow pool. Then came the slow shuffle of her footsteps toward the bathroom. The door creaked open. Water ran. She was trying to look normal, like maybe she could wash it off. I waited for her to come into the bedroom. She didn't. She slept on the couch. The next morning, I didn't bring it up. I couldn't. I just watched her make coffee with her usual over-precise 2 scoops and almond milk. I watched her stare out the window like she was waiting for something. Maybe lightning, maybe forgiveness, maybe the sound of me exploding. But I didn't. I sat at the table in my worn-out hoodie and said, "You sleep okay?" She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just nodded and said, "Yeah." I stayed up watching a documentary. That was her first official lie. And somehow, it made me feel worse than what I saw at the party. Because it was so casual. Like we were both already silently agreeing to enter this shadow game where no one says what they mean. Where she pretends nothing happened, and I pretend I didn't notice. But then came the toothbrush. Later that afternoon, I was in the bathroom, brushing my teeth when I saw it. A second toothbrush. Dark green. Definitely not mine. Hers was always white and soft-bristled. This one was firmer. Used. Recently. It sat there in the cup like a loaded gun. I stood there, mouth full of foam, staring at it like it might move on its own. My hand trembled a little. I wanted to believe it was a backup. A spare. A travel one she brought out by accident. But no. Callie is minimalist to a fault. She once threw away an entire drawer of cables just because none of them sparked joy. A second toothbrush didn't slip through. Someone brought it here. Someone used it. And the worst part? She didn't even try to hide it. That meant something. It meant we weren't just cracking. Something was already broken. And I was the last one to figure it out. I didn't confront her about the toothbrush. Not then. I just quietly removed it, wrapped it in an old grocery bag, and shoved it behind the paint cans in the garage. I don't know why. I guess I wanted to keep it. Like evidence. Like if everything fell apart, I could point to it and say, "See? It started here." That night, she came to bed. She curled into me like she used to, like nothing had happened. Her head on my chest, fingers laced through mine. She even kissed the inside of my wrist, a ritual from our early years. I wanted to believe it was real. I really did. But I couldn't stop staring at the ceiling, wondering who used that toothbrush. And how many other things in our home weren't ours anymore. The days that followed blurred. She was oddly affectionate. Not overly, just enough to keep me second-guessing myself. She made dinner 2 nights in a row, unprompted. Left a sticky note on my laptop that said, "Love you always." She even laughed at one of my terrible jokes about the neighbor's cat trying to fight our mailbox. For a moment, I thought maybe I had imagined it. Maybe it was Paula's sweater. Maybe the guy at the party was a cousin or some old friend from college. Maybe the toothbrush was hers all along, and my mind was playing games with me because I don't know, boring. But then, something else happened. She posted a photo of us on her Instagram. Rare, but not unheard of. Just the two of us at brunch. Her smiling. Me half smiling. The caption was neutral, Sunday peace. Nothing suspicious. Except, there was a mirror in the background. And in the mirror, barely visible but undeniably there, was a man standing just behind our table. Tall, shaved head, tan coat. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at her. And she was looking back. Not directly, not obviously, but her eyes, in the reflection, weren't on me. They were angled slightly to the right. Toward him. My stomach dropped. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. His face was too unclear. Could have been anyone. But the way he stood, relaxed, confident, like he belonged there, it felt wrong. Like he'd been there before. Like this wasn't the first time he was close enough to touch her in public. I didn't say a word. I just liked the photo. Put my phone down. And stared at the wall for almost an hour. That night, I had a dream that I was sitting in our kitchen, and every drawer I opened had something that didn't belong. A stranger's socks in the cutlery drawer. A passport with someone else's face next to her name. My wedding ring, melted into a soup spoon. I woke up sweating. She was already gone. No note this time. Just the sound of the garage door closing and silence that screamed something I didn't want to admit. By the time I got home from work the next day, she was already in bed. That, in itself, wasn't strange. Callie worked from home, and she often claimed she needed recovery naps after Zoom meetings. What was strange was the bedroom door. Locked. We've never locked doors in this house. Not once. Even when we fought, and we've had our share of late-night shouting matches over stupid things like laundry or my mother's passive-aggressive texts, the bedroom was always a neutral zone. But now it was sealed, quietly, like it had something to hide. I knocked not hard, just enough to test it. Nothing. I twisted the knob again, pretending I hadn't heard the soft click when I first tried. Still locked. Callie, I said through the wood. She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice was too calm, too even. I'm on a call. Can you give me a sec? It was 9:17 p.m. A call. No laptop sounds. No speaking from her side. Just stillness. I stood there, hand on the doorknob, for way too long. I must have looked ridiculous, a grown man, frozen like a kid outside the principal's office, too afraid to find out what he already knew. Eventually, I walked away. I didn't eat dinner that night. Just sat in the kitchen scrolling through nothing. Social media, emails, spam folders. I must have refreshed the weather app 5 times like it would show me a different life forecast. Around 10:30, I heard the door unlock. Quietly. I didn't get up. I didn't go upstairs. But I heard her footsteps. Light. Controlled. She went straight to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stood there way too long. Not grabbing anything. Just standing there. Then she whispered something. I don't think it was meant for me to hear. Just a little longer. That's what she said. It chilled me. I sat perfectly still. She didn't know I was there in the dark, at the corner of the hallway, just barely out of her line of sight. I watched her close the fridge, press both palms to the counter, and breathe like she'd just run a mile. Then she turned off the kitchen light and went back upstairs. Alone. I waited 5 minutes before going to the bedroom. The door was unlocked now. Inside, she was asleep. Or pretending to be. I stood there longer than I should have, watching the rise and fall of the blanket where her body curled away from me. The silence between us was no longer empty. It was crowded. With shadows. With unasked questions. With answers I didn't want but couldn't keep ignoring. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, the locked door was open again. But something else was missing. Her wedding ring. I noticed it as she reached for her phone. Her left hand, bare, pale around the band mark like the sun had forgotten it was supposed to shine there. She didn't explain. I didn't ask. Because suddenly, I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. I was afraid of how ready I was to hear it. I've always hated silence. Not the peaceful kind. I mean the kind that sits between two people who used to talk without stopping. The kind that makes your own breathing feel loud. That was what our mornings had become. Her pouring coffee in total quiet. Me pretending to read headlines on my phone, though I wasn't even scrolling. We lived in the same space, but it was like we'd become two people renting different hours in the same house. The weekend came, and she said she had errands, groceries, pharmacy, maybe the farmer's market. All very normal. Very planned. I nodded like I believed it. But I didn't. So when she left, I did something I'm not proud of. I followed her. Not in some dramatic movie way. I didn't tail her car with binoculars and a trench coat. I just left 20 minutes after she did and parked across from the street where she always gets her hair done. It's called Juniper and Sage. She always complains about how overpriced they are. That's why I figured she wouldn't really be there. And I was right. Her car was parked outside a small house I'd never seen before, in a quiet neighborhood we never visit. I waited. The windows were tinted and the blinds inside were drawn. But I could see just enough. I saw the door open. I saw him. The same man from the brunch photo reflection. He stepped outside to smoke. Calm, casual, like he lived there. Like this wasn't his first Saturday with her. I didn't approach. I didn't want to see them together. I couldn't. I went home, but I left my phone in the car by accident. That's how I missed the call. She tried to reach me twice. I saw the missed calls an hour later. No voicemails. Just 2 quiet rings in the middle of her secret afternoon. Later that night, we were in the living room. She was scrolling, feet tucked under her, curled up like everything was fine. I finally broke the silence. You called earlier, I said. She glanced at me, then nodded. Yeah, I wanted to ask if you needed anything from the store. Her voice didn't stutter. No guilt. No nervousness. If she was lying, and I knew she was, she'd already mastered the mask. But then, something happened that cracked the surface. She got a text, and her phone, which was usually on silent, buzzed. She flinched. I watched her glance at it, hesitate, then slowly tilt the screen away as she tapped to open the message. That's when I said, carefully, "Is everything okay?" She looked up too fast. What? You seem surprised by that text. It's just Paula, she replied. That same name again, like a well-worn excuse. Asking about work stuff. I nodded slowly, pretending to buy it. But I saw her thumb twitch as she locked the screen. She forgot something, though. When she turned the phone just slightly back toward me as she set it down, I saw the preview of the message. It didn't say Paula. It said, "You shouldn't have called him. That wasn't the deal." And below it, the name of the sender, Noah. I don't know who Noah is, but I'm starting to understand that whoever he is, he knows me. And he wasn't supposed to. I couldn't stop thinking about the text. Not just the words, that wasn't the deal, but the name. Noah. The way it popped up so cleanly on her screen. No emoji, no nickname, no disguise. Just Noah. Like I was supposed to know who that was. Like he was a friend. Or worse, like he used to be. That night, she fell asleep quickly. Or pretended to. I sat in the hallway with my laptop, surrounded by nothing but the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of wood shifting in the frame. I searched through her social media. No mentions of a Noah. Nothing in tagged photos, no follows with that name. I checked her LinkedIn. Scanned old posts. Nothing. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I went into her email. I know how that sounds. But at this point, I wasn't looking to catch her in some petty betrayal. I was trying to understand the framework of a story I clearly wasn't told. And the deeper I got, the more I realized something strange. There were no emails. No sent messages. No inbox from before 2 months ago. It was all clean. Too clean. Like someone had swept through and wiped the slate. Except for one thing. A vet appointment confirmation. I almost skipped past it. We don't have a pet. Not since we lost our cat, Derry, last year. But this email was dated 3 weeks ago, and it listed a follow-up visit for Benny. A dog. Medium-sized. Male. Neutered. Vaccinations up to date. I remember just sitting there, blinking at the screen. Not because I was confused, but because I knew, in my gut, she hadn't mentioned a dog for a reason. I copied down the address and planned to stop by the clinic the next morning before work. It was a quiet, tucked-away place, Briar Grove Animal Center, sandwiched between a bakery and an abandoned yoga studio. I walked in and said I was there to ask about a dog named Benny. I expected them to turn me away, tell me it was private, or ask for ID. But instead, the receptionist smiled. "Oh yeah, Benny. He's such a sweetheart. You must be Noah." I froze. My mouth actually went dry. "Noah," I said before I could think. "Why would you think I'm Noah?" She blinked at me, confused. "He usually brings Benny in. Or, I guess last time your wife brought him. She said they were co-owning him now?" I didn't answer. I turned and left. I don't even remember getting back into the car. Just that my hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and I could hear my pulse in my ears like someone banging on a door from the inside. Co-owning? With Noah? A dog? There was an entire life being built in parallel to mine. Vet visits. Shared responsibilities. Private appointments. A second version of her, walking into offices and introducing herself with his name in the same sentence. And the worst part? That version of her seemed happier, more alive, like the version I got. The one who locked doors and cried at night was the shadow she left behind. I didn't go home right away. I parked 3 blocks away from our house and just sat there with the engine off, staring through the windshield as dusk settled in. I watched the light fade off the rooftops, watched a kid ride a bike in circles down the street until his mom yelled at him from a porch. I had no music playing, no podcast, nothing. Just the soft tick of the cooling engine and the sound of me trying to remember how we got here. How I ended up married to someone who was co-owning a dog with another man, in secret, while sleeping in my bed and pouring my coffee like we were still something real. Eventually, I drove home. She wasn't there. That wasn't unusual anymore. But something was. When I stepped inside, the whole house smelled like detergent. Strong. Not like she'd cleaned, like she was covering something up. I walked from room to room slowly, like I was afraid of stepping on something fragile. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Except the garage door was cracked. Just barely. Maybe an inch. We never leave that door open. It was our unspoken line. The garage was hers. It had always been that way. She called it her project space, even though I hadn't seen her use it in over a year. I assumed it was storage. Boxes. Old clothes. Tools she never figured out how to use. But tonight, something pulled me toward it. I opened the door and turned on the light. It took my eyes a second to adjust. At first, all I saw were the usual things: shelves, paint cans, a folded-up ladder. But then I noticed something different in the far corner. A small folding table with 2 chairs. A half-empty coffee cup. A water bowl on the ground. A leash. And next to that, a small dog bed. I stood there staring at it all like my brain couldn't catch up with my eyes. This wasn't just a storage room. It was a hideaway. A whole private space carved out inside the house I paid for. And not for us. For them. I looked around for cameras. For anything that might explain why she'd been coming out here instead of taking Benny, or Noah, anywhere else. But then I saw it. Behind a stack of boxes was an old suitcase. Mine. One I hadn't used since before the pandemic. I pulled it out, unzipped it, and my breath caught. Inside were clothes. My clothes. Folded, laundered, packed. A toothbrush. A copy of my driver's license. A folder with medical paperwork I didn't recognize. But the name on the paperwork was mine. Except, the address wasn't. It was Noah's. I felt a wave of nausea crawl up my spine. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a replacement. She hadn't been living 2 lives. She'd been building one, somewhere else, and slowly transferring me out of it. Erasing me. Like I was the mistake she didn't want to fight about anymore. I stood there, gripping the suitcase like it was the last piece of proof I'd ever hold, and for the first time in weeks. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because in that moment, all I could think about was one thing. If she had planned this far ahead, what exactly was supposed to happen next? I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the guest bed with the suitcase still by my feet, my fingers tracing the zipper over and over like it held some kind of code I hadn't yet cracked. I kept waiting for her to come home, to walk through the front door, to act like nothing had happened, like she could keep pretending. But she didn't come back. Not that night. Not the next morning. Instead, at 7:41 a.m., I got a text from her. Just one line. "I think you know now. I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation. No confrontation. No tears. She didn't even ask me to forgive her. I sat there staring at that message for longer than I want to admit. Part of me expected to feel rage, or grief, or the kind of cinematic heartbreak they show in movies where the guy smashes mirrors or collapses in a parking lot. But I didn't. What I felt was stillness. Like a tension inside me had finally snapped and floated away. Like I had been holding my breath for so long, I forgot what air felt like. I didn't reply. Instead, I packed the suitcase she'd hidden for me, because maybe she was right about one thing. It was time for me to go. But I didn't go to Noah's address. I booked a cabin 2 hours outside the city. One with no Wi-Fi, no cell reception, and no space for ghosts. And for 2 weeks, I just existed. I hiked. I read. I wrote in an old journal I hadn't touched since college. I cooked my own meals, badly. I watched the sun rise over a lake so still it felt like glass. And for the first time in years, I wasn't performing for anyone. I wasn't shrinking myself to avoid confrontation or pretending not to notice when love turned into habit. I was just me, and that was enough. Eventually, I came back to the city, moved into a small apartment above a bakery, got a cat from a rescue shelter. His name is Linus, and he snores louder than a grown man. I'm learning to live again in smaller ways, little rituals that are just mine. Morning walks, coffee in silence, leaving doors open, because now there's nothing I'm afraid of finding behind them. Callie never reached out again, and I never needed her to, because in the end, what she gave me, without meaning to, was something I never would have given myself. A reset, not revenge, not closure, freedom, not the kind that comes with loud declarations or dramatic exits, but the kind that arrives softly, slowly, with the realization that sometimes being left behind is the greatest gift someone can give you, because it means the door is finally open. And this time, I get to walk through it on my own terms.